Welcome to Eyewitness News. My name is Tsidi Madia. We are in conversation with Limpopo's secretary, the ANC Limpopo secretary, Soviet Lekganyane. We're going to speak to him about some of the things we've been hearing around the ANC in Limpopo. There might be some developments, so let's find out. I do know that they need to find a replacement for Thembi Nkadimeng as mayor of Limpopo. Ndata Lekganyane, thank you so much for joining us. My first question is Danny Msiza suspended from the ANC, or is he still a member as we speak?
No, he is not suspended.
Why has he not been suspended?
You must remember that the National Executive Committee of the ANC has taken a decision in March this year that all members of the African National Congress who are criminally indicted should voluntarily step aside from their positions. And subsequent to that, there were terms and conditions that were adopted by the National Executive Committee. Once a member steps aside, the leadership of the province will then inform him or her about the terms and conditions of step aside. And so in our case here, you would remember that Comrade Danny Msiza had stepped aside before, directed by the National Executive Committee of the ANC. And when we gave a report to the Provincial Executive Committee about the decision that was taken for comrades to step aside, the PEC requested the NEC to consider that the comrade had stepped aside before for almost 2 years. And then that submission was made to the National Executive Committee. And the National Executive Committee decided that all comrades who have been criminally indicted should step aside, and that the step aside guidelines should be implemented consistently across all the provinces without any deviation. So on Monday, the 16th of August, the Provincial Executive Committee of Limpopo received a letter from the SGO. The letter was informing us that, in fact, it was an instruction to the PEC that the National Executive Committee has decided that there was not going to be any special dispensation for any member of the ANC. The step aside must be implemented consistently. And I took the letter and wrote a covering letter to Comrade Danny Msiza to inform him formally about the communique that we received from the SGO. And so we were meeting today. We had a meeting of the PwC and the officials, and the PEC. So Comrade Danny Msiza was not present in that meeting. And the provincial chairperson gave us a report that he is in possession of a copy of a letter where Comrade Danny Msiza is offering to voluntarily step aside in compliance with the decision of the NEC. So when we meet in our officials meeting next week, Monday, we assume that by that time, the letter would have reached the office of the provincial secretary, and then it will be an item so that the office of the provincial secretary is able to formally write back to him to inform him about the terms and conditions of step aside. The terms and conditions of step aside have been decided at the National Executive Committee. We're not going to generate new terms and conditions. They are there. It's just to formalize it in meetings of the ANC. You remember that the provincial secretary cannot just write to him and inform him about the terms and conditions. The procedure is that the report must go to the PwC or the PEC. The PwC or the PEC are the structures in the province that can direct the provincial secretary to write back to him to inform him about the terms and conditions.
Soviet, why did it take so long? Because you can make an argument that there was an issue of him having stepped aside previously, but even to resolve that, surely Limpopo should have acted when all the other provinces were raising questions around step aside.
Yes, I think I have given you a background why there were these delays in the implementation, because I say to you that the provincial chairperson and provincial secretary sit in the National Executive Committee of the ANC. And when they come back to the province to give a report that these are the decisions that the NEC has made, the PEC instructed the provincial secretary to write back to the NEC to say, can you please consider that the comrade has stepped aside before? And that is what we were doing throughout until on Monday this week, when we received a very clearly written letter that indicates that the step aside guidelines are going to be implemented consistently without any deviation, and that the leadership of the ANC will not be meeting with provinces to deal with individual cases of members.
But here's where I'm struggling, where Limpopo seems to have wanted to make itself an exception. Those issues couldn't have taken this many months. The most senior and the Secretary General of the ANC was long forced to step aside, and he also sought consultation. He went back and forth. Provinces, the questions you said you were asking, the back and forth, other provinces were doing that. And they then reached conclusions and dealt with their issue. It almost sounds like Limpopo did want the NEC to deal with it as an individual province. Yet, from the very beginning, we've all known that the ANC said, as the national body, we will deal with those in the NEC. Provinces deal with your people. It still doesn't necessarily explain why it's taken this long. That's what I'm struggling with.
Yes, I have been as transparent as possible, and I can see you demand that I must now be naked. I'm talking to you as the provincial secretary. I communicate the decisions of the collective to say, all those reports that you talk about, we have given the reports to the collective. And the collective says, Soviet, we hear your report. Can you please write to the National Executive Committee and say, can you consider that the comrade has stepped aside before? Don't you think that this constitutes a double jeopardy on the part of the member if he was going to step aside for the second time? And that was the wisdom of the PEC. And as the secretary, I communicate decisions of the PEC, whether to the public or to the National Executive Committee or to structures at sub-provincial level. It's my work to write those letters on behalf of the PEC. That is why even now I say to you, when we have received that letter from the SGO and the comrade having subsequently offered to step aside, I can't sit here in my office and impose terms and conditions on him. I have a copy of the terms and conditions, but it must still be an instruction of the PwC that now that we have a letter, please write to him and inform him about the terms and conditions. That is the procedure which is outlined in the step aside guidelines, and we must not even do anything wrong because we may end up jeopardizing the process. I understand that there are comrades, including in my province, who have stepped aside without any qualm in adherence to the decisions of the National Executive Committee. I think what we should do is to apologize to the leadership of the ANC and members of the ANC in general, especially those who find themselves in the same position, who were affected by the court cases that they have, that it has taken us so long as the Provincial Executive Committee to execute the matter in the manner we did.
All right. In terms of going forward, without a Danny Msiza there, I mean, you've obviously had this experience. What are your expectations in terms of the running of the organization without the treasurer? He is often said to be an important player, said to be quite powerful. what is the vision going forward? He has been suspended before, but it wasn't as protected a time as what it might be now, because there's no telling how long the VBS matter might be in the courts.
Look, we will always want to have a full complement of all ANC leaders, but you will understand that if individual members of the ANC are facing personal circumstances, we have said that we will always want to separate the personal circumstances of an individual from the organization, and we hope we will learn from other provinces. The comrades in Mpumalanga, since 2017, when their provincial chairperson, Comrade Didi Mabuza, was elected the deputy president of the ANC, and comrades who were in the top 5, the provincial secretary, their provincial secretary became the acting chairperson. And they have been operating being 2 or 3 in the officials. You remember we had the situation of Marius Fransman in the Western Cape, where he could not be able to execute his responsibilities. We had the situation of Comrade John Block, Comrade Mabuya Kulu in KZN. Look, we subscribe to collective leadership. The comrades that remain in the collective, painful as the decisions may have to be implemented, the organization must run. In any event, this organization does not have its origin from one individual member. It is the people's organization. And those that are there in the leadership are the ones that must propel it forward.
Granted. Can we just talk about today? Part of the reason why the PEC was meeting, I understand, is to nominate names to send to national to replace Danny Msiza. Just to find out how that process went, who are the people that you think could be capable of taking Polokwane forward?
It's not about who I think, it's about the names that the Provincial Executive Committee has decided upon. The PEC meeting has ended, and the names that were suggested by the regions have been considered. And so then a recommendation will be made to the National Executive Committee of the ANC. For sure, you know that we are taking a new approach in the ANC now, where interviews are being conducted at head office once provinces have submitted names of candidates. So the names of candidates would be submitted to head office, and head office will conduct interviews. They will give us a feedback on the outcomes of the interviews.
Has the province endorsed the names submitted by the region? Or the changes?
It's not about whether there is an endorsement. What the province will be submitting names to the head office.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
For interviews. Because look, let's observe organizational etiquette. I have to write to the office of the Secretary General, and I cannot now announce the product of the PEC meeting in the media even before it reaches the office of the Secretary General.
Granted. I want to move on from those 2 conversations. Those are the 2 immediate things I wanted to deal with. But I want to also just get your general sense of how is the political status, the political health of the organization in Limpopo as a secretary? What are your general observations about the ANC as we speak right now there?
The ANC is very strong in the province with very enthusiastic membership. For sure, you know by now, after when we went to the conference of 2017, our province was number 4 in terms of membership. It was below KZN, Eastern Cape, and Mpumalanga. Since we came out of the provincial conference, in terms of the records in the new membership system, our province is number 2 after KZN. It means we've been working very hard to renew the membership of our comrades, but not only that, to make sure that the ANC becomes vibrant once again. we held no less than 15 by-elections in the province between 2018 and now. And we have lost only one by-election. The ward, even in 2016, was not an ANC ward. It belonged to the DA in Tabazimbi. We lost it. Then there is a ward that was led by the DA in Vilabela. We annexed Ward 5 in Vilabela from the DA. And currently, with participation of communities in activities of the ANC, especially with regards to county selection, we are doing very well. The support that we give to government and our communities with regard to awareness on the coronavirus pandemic and how people must support the rollout of the vaccine. I think we are doing very well as a province. You must also have seen that. With regard to the regions, for sure, you know, we are one province together with the Northern Cape that have already started to convene successful conferences through virtual platforms.
The Norman region.
Yeah, Norman Mashaban is the largest region in the province with 129 wards. So we have two other regions, Bembe region with 127 wards.
So I was confused.
And
It's Norman Mashabani in Mopani, ne?
Norman Mashabani is Mopani in government. And Skukune region, which are the two regions that are now ready for conference. They could have gone to conference. Unfortunately, there was an outbreak of the third wave. But now, because we are also chasing the IEC deadlines for registration of candidates on Monday, the 23rd of August, that's why we said we are going to put all organizational programs in abeyance and drive to conclude the process for registration of candidates. But generally, we are a very stable province with a very good catership. And we are very proud of the work that is happening in the province. The organization is functional at all levels. Most of our branches by now have convened successful biannual general meetings.
But Limpopo is also where we saw people attacking one another. I think it was the Waterberg region. What has happened to those implicated in that particular affair? Have you found out which one of your comrades were fighting in those councillor processes? Has there been any disciplinary action taken? What's the status on those kind of issues?
Look, we sent a team to go and investigate, but in most cases where you find people fighting in a meeting of the ANC or around the precincts of a meeting of the ANC, those people are not ANC members and we do not have authority over them. Unfortunately, this happens around the precincts of an ANC meeting. It was not in Waterberg alone. There was an incident in Musina Ward 4 and also in Skukune, Elias Mutualedi sub-region, and the other one was in Lephalale in Waterberg. Those were the incidents where the incidents that were brought to our attention, and they are receiving attention. If we are going to have, if the reports show that there were members of the ANC who were involved, we are definitely going to take action against those members.
So these were happening in vicinity where ANC was having meetings in more than one area, and you say these are not ANC members. That can't be a coincidence.
No, it is a coincidence. It is a strange or a mysterious coincidence. When people fight at your wedding, are you saying that they are your family members?
If they fight at 5 of my weddings, I think something is suspicious.
No, people come to your wedding and they drink on the street and they end up fighting there. We can't say your family members were fighting. It's just an unfortunate circumstance where an incident like that end up happening and it steals the limelight from your precious event.
And we're going to have to disagree on that, on how you see that.
We can disagree the whole year about it, but we have a membership list of comrades. The system that we are using is very reliable with ID numbers and fiscal addresses and contact numbers of people. Once we see a person on video, we identify the person and check him or her in our membership system if that person is a member of the ANC. And if the person is not a member of the ANC, we can't even suspend him. We don't have authority over it. That is why we said, CD, we wrote a letter to branches of the ANC to say, given the fact that we may not have authority over non-members of the ANC, if we have such incidences happening, please report those to the police. And any branch of the ANC that fails to report such matters to the police, we will take action against it. That is the instruction that we have given to ANC branches.
I accept the instruction. I just want to quickly say that some, as the ANC speaks of rather, a culture of members, some might be members of members and not the party and act on their behalf outside of where the party is. Do you recognize that that's a possibility?
It's not a possibility, it's a reality.
Okay.
The first thing that you see that attests to what you are saying is when a Soviet has been charged for raping an 89-year-old woman, a senior citizen in the country. Shal will come with a brigade of ANC members who come to say hands off against Soviet. They don't even want to think anything about that 89-year-old, that she's a senior citizen, she belongs to a family that deserves to be dignified, that deserves to be given solidarity. Not even one of them will go to the family and say, our comrade has done this wrong, or there are allegations about our comrade. The family just sees them during the court appearance, and some even insulting the family members or even insulting the victim. So you would understand that that is a very, very serious weakness on the part of a member of the ANC, that we need to be very conscious and considerate about our actions, especially when they come to affect ordinary members of society who may not have a voice to represent them. The ANC member must be the first one to come to the defense of the vulnerable. So once you have that kind of members, you may not confidently say these are members of the ANC. Obviously, they have joined other members of the ANC, and they may live and die without them having been ANC members. And you see, one other problem is when you have other members of the ANC who are able to pay subscription fees for other members. When a person has paid a membership subscription fee for you, it means you don't have your full rights as a member of the ANC, because the person who pays subscriptions will always call the shots. You know, when they say the one who pays the piper calls the tune.
Yes.
When you go to a meeting, you are gathered somewhere, you are addressed, you are told how you are going to behave yourselves in a meeting, how you are going to sing, and how you are even going to sit in that meeting. Sometimes you even find people come into a meeting wearing the same regalia, maybe the same T-shirts or the same scarves or the same beret or everything.
We see that very often in the ANC, particularly around conference time, actually. It's not a unique thing that you're referring to, you're right. It is a reality. I want to switch a little bit to you. You are, from what I understand, if not the longest, you're one of if not the longest, you're one of the longest serving officials there in Limpopo. Do you remain comfortable just being an official? Do you not want to be at the complete helm of the province? Where do you stand? And what is next for Soviet Lekganyane as we speak?
Look, the ANC is not my mother's organization or my father's organization where I know that I will eventually inherit the assets of my family. I have been in the provincial executive committee of the ANC since 2008. And so if time comes that a conference of the ANC says there is a need for a change of guard, I'm going to thank the members of the ANC for the opportunity that they have given me. Let me tell you, before I got elected into senior leadership positions of the African National Congress, I only had a teacher's diploma. But today, I have university qualifications, a law degree, a political science degree, a postgraduate diploma with Wits University. I'm now completing my honors degree in political science with UNISA. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity the organization has given me, because by my family standards, I will still be a teacher today. But the opportunities that I was given for having been in government as the MEC in the legislature, enjoying certain privileges where the legislature had an education program with Wits University and other institutions, I was able to benefit from that. So, ahead of anything, I should be grateful for the opportunities that I have been given by the African National Congress without even being selfish or over-ambitious.
I know that Danny Msiza said he's done. I've spoken to him. I've interviewed him about it. Some people are agitating for your name. What's your reaction to that then?
Look, I normally do not want to venture into those things, because the members of the ANC, the way we've been taught when we arrived here was that we should be the first to serve and the last to get the rewards. Even if Matabata was to leave tomorrow, it may not be possible for me to replace him, because I'm required to be full-time at the ANC provincial office as the provincial secretary. And obviously there are members in that legislature who can be appointed because they are there serving with him. But secondly, I'm very aware as the provincial secretary that the last time when we were appointing premiers in the NEC, because I was there representing the province when Matabata was out of the meeting because he was conflicted. There was a very, very heated debate about an uninterrupted lineage of male comrades succeeding each other in Limpopo as premier since 1994. Ourselves, together with KwaZulu-Natal, for sure, you know are the provinces that have not had female premiers. And as a disciplined cadre of the African National Congress, but also learning from meetings like those, you know how fallacious or how futile it becomes once you start to develop ambition to that position. Because as a leader, you must lead by example by embracing policies of the ANC. If a time has come that Limpopo must have a female candidate as a premier, I must be the first person to support that candidature, because it's a policy of our organization. So over and above all, it must not be about me as an individual. It must be about what is best for the ANC. For now, let us concentrate on the conferences that must happen in the regions. Let us concentrate on the task at hand, that is ensuring that all candidates of the ANC are registered for local government elections. And the rest of the things will come when the time arrives for the provincial conference to sit and check if Soviet will still be alive at that time as a human being. We can talk about many things. You know, for you just to say, I want to be this and that without knowing that whether at that time you will still be here, I don't think it shows a consciousness. So let us serve this organization, the people of the country and members of the ANC selflessly, without looking at our own personal ambitions, because some of the things that distract us as leaders of the African National Congress is when we start looking at ourselves, where I can be. If you have been elected as the provincial secretary, do your best in that position for the term that you have been elected without looking at another position. If another position comes, you will come and work in that position in the same way as you have worked in the previous position than for you. You know, once a leader decides for himself or herself which positions he or she wants to occupy in the organization, that is where the problems start.
I've got a different opinion, but it's not important at the moment. Earlier, you said that the province is doing well, it's stable. Some of the conversations I've had leading up to this moment spoke about you in the PEC, saying that, you know, you might as well seem as a lone force going against the PEC that's in favor of somebody like Danny Msiza, that is often opposed to the views of the secretary. What's your reaction to that?
In the PEC of the ANC, we go there and discuss issues. And when we come out of the meeting, we communicate collective decisions of the PEC. In the ANC, we don't subscribe to individual brilliance. Individual brilliance does not supersede collective wisdom. That is what made this organization to be great. And there is no individual member of the ANC or human being who is infallible. Human beings are liable to weaknesses, they are liable to commit mistakes, and some mistakes may even be fatal. But above all, human beings also have unique qualities.
Okay. Do you enjoy the confidence? Does the PEC, let me put it this way, do you enjoy confidence from the PEC as the secretary of the ANC Limpopo? From where you stand, do you feel they genuinely believe in your capabilities?
It's not about having to enjoy confidence with the PEC. The PEC is a committee to which we were elected, all of us. I was elected by conference overwhelmingly. So if you look at the results of that conference, you realize that in all the positions that were contested, the votes for Soviet Lekganyane were the highest votes at that conference. So that is where we were elected. And the next conference should be happening next year.
The ANC in Limpopo was a very different ANC in Limpopo from where it was then versus now. Even I could say that, and I don't live there. Based on the ANC in Limpopo that I covered in the lead up to 2017 and what I hear now, it's not the same organization. So I'll ask you again, Soviet, do you think you enjoy the confidence from your comrades in the PEC?
The ANC continues to improve in the province day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. And I'm telling you now that I'm the provincial secretary of the ANC. We are left with less than 12 months to the next provincial conference. If it was a matter of confidence, that confidence should be attributable to all members of the Provincial Executive Committee. You cannot single out an individual member of the ANC and say, is there confidence in you as a leader in the province? Because there is no person who is elected alone at a conference. When we go to a conference, we elect a collective of 35 members.
One would describe that as an excuse, Soviet, that a former president of the ANC once used about collective responsibility. Again, I want to go back to the issue of your role in the party. You won't talk to me about confidence, but let me put it to you, let me ask it this way. If Danny Msiza had made a decision not to voluntarily step aside, what would have happened? Would you have been able to suspend him as the secretary?
I don't have those powers to suspend him. If he did not step aside, remember the way I explained this matter. This is not a decision of the PEC.
But the responsibility is given to the PEC by the NEC. That's why the letter then said those who are secretaries.
No, I sit in the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Let me explain to you. When we sit in the National Executive Committee of the NEC wants to know how its decisions are being implemented. And that is why the NEC is able to write to us to inform us that you must make that the decision is implemented. So if he had not stepped aside, it is not a matter which rests on my shoulders whether I will suspend him or not. it's a matter which must be considered by the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC against the decisions of the NEC, and the PEC must make a decision whether it wants to become a parallel authority to the National Executive Committee, so that the NEC will know that in Limpopo we have a PEC that defies our decision or a PEC that adheres to our decisions. It's not about an individual member. Why don't you ask the provincial chairperson as the political head of the province to say, if he has not stepped aside, will you do that?
Because the regulations that you're referring to from Step Aside, and I've read them many times, say that it's up to the secretariat. So in the province,
no, you have read them
with your leader at national level. I've asked the question. I've asked the suspended Secretary General the very same question.
You have read them in ellipses. The guidelines say that the provincial secretary acting on the directive of the PwC or the PEC. Remember, one basic principle that you must understand in the ANC is that one of collective leadership. You must never have a secretary who is becoming a super member of the ANC, who will move around every day looking at who is doing what and then deciding to suspend them. That is why the secretary, when he or she acts, they do that on the directive of the PwC or the PEC. Even the DSG, when she wrote those letters to suspend the Secretary General, remember, she was acting on the instructions of the National Executive, because the African National Congress subscribes to collective leadership. You must never have Lekganyane who sits at his house and goes through social media posts of members of the ANC, and when you wake up, the whole province is suspended from the African National. It doesn't work like that in the ANC.
That it doesn't. We'd have a better ANC if it did. My parting shot to you. There's no fear, no threat, no concern. You said the province is stable. So imagine there's no fear, no threat, no concern about the ANC in Limpopo possibly being disbanded from where you stand.
No, I don't know what is on the table of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. I'm not serving in the national officials or in the NWC. I only serve in the NEC. And we wait for items coming from the national officials and the NWC. So where I stand, I do not know of anything that worries the leadership of the ANC at national level, which may warrant that the PEC of Limpopo should be dissolved. But even if such matter was there, the leadership cannot just wake up and say we're dissolving the province. They would have gotten into contact with us to raise whatever concerns they have with us. And then they give us a chance to explain ourselves, and they satisfy themselves that the explanations we have given are reasonable or valid. Or if they think that they are invalid or unreasonable, they will then say to us, we're taking your matter to the NEC, and the NEC will tell us what must we do with. But look, when you are elected to a position, there is no way you can always be looking sideways to check if you are being disbanded or not. When you are elected, do the work until you are instructed to stop. That is why throughout, if you have seen, we have always been trying to ensure that whatever decisions that are taken, especially decisions of the National Executive Committee, should get effective implementation in the province, because one of the tasks of the Provincial Executive Committee, as stipulated in the Constitution of the ANC, is to carry out the instructions of the National Executive Committee. Like when I said to you, the letter which the SGO wrote to us was not a negotiation, it's an instruction to say to the province that the NEC has made a decision and you are going to implement. And we don't have time as the national officials to be meeting with provinces one by one to explain decisions of the NEC. That's what it means.
Had you actually asked the officials to come to Limpopo and maybe explain this to the PEC? Because that last bit read from the letter actually does speak to a province that asked to get individual attention.
We have met with them before. We have met with them before, and we presented the matters that we wanted to present to them. And they said, we will respond to your matters. They have responded in a letter. The letter is very clear and ambiguous, written in a very good, readable English, not confusing. Every one of us understands every one of us now understands where the NEC stands on these matters.
All right, thank you so much. That's the ANC in Limpopo Secretary, Soviet Lekganyane. Thank you so much for your time.